So such a honor, really, to have you here. It's
Yeah,
really great.
I'm very I'm very shy, like I'm very introverted. So doing these things is, outside my comfort zone, but it's like, well, you know, if it can help someone out there, then, it's definitely worth doing, right? So,
Yeah. Thanks a lot, because you will be. I mean, you will be very relaxed. This I don't know if to say speech or probably it's a kind of chat, because the plan is you will start first to introduce something about yourself, right? Your
mhm,
professional career or something, and after that, whenever you want, we can start with the open questions, and people
sure.
will jump with some questions. It will be perfect. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, sounds
So
good.
do you prefer that people interrupt your speech if they have questions, or you prefer to wait to the end of your presentation? Up to you, because it depends on people. Some people they prefer to wait for the end, other people they prefer to be interrupted, so up to you.
I think so what I was thinking of doing is having like, basically talking about my journey and stuff and giving some advice and then just do questions at the end.
Good, perfect, fantastic, it will be
Oh,
perfect. In fact, I will tell people to write some questions on the chat in case they have questions, so they can do it to the end.
okay, great.
And if there is, because most of people were Spanish speakers, so
Hmm.
if there is anybody with some problem with the with the oral part, maybe they
Sure.
can write in the chat, so it will
Yeah, I was
be.
I was thinking that, my
mm,
it's all going to be in English, so if people have if people want any clarification, yeah, feel free to ask.
good, perfect. Okay, so more and more people are coming.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I just posted about it on my story, like maybe 45 minutes ago or half hour ago. So, yeah.
Good, okay, perfect. Yes, only probably you are very busy, so we will start on time. In 2 minutes we will start.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Last year, I did a panel at Noman School in Hollywood, and it
Uh-huh.
was like on a stage, and it was like being streamed online, and there was like an audience and everything, and um, that's that's a lot more a lot more scary, It's
Yeah, I guess.
yeah, but then once you're up there and like you start going, you're like, okay, like I can do this, you know. Yeah,
Yes, I think that you will do it. I guess you will do more and more, for
yeah.
sure. In fact, I was watching an interview that you had with a guy. Let me check the name. It's Frankie E at the
Hmm.
beginning of this year.
Yeah.
A girl, good, very good. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that
So
was fun. Just like kind of having a one-on-one chat and
it's
talking about.
very common to have these kind of programs in the States, or not, because for example in Spain we have not
Mm.
so many programs or so many presentations like this.
I would say especially in California, it's
Mm,
it's it's a lot more common,
I
because
see.
um I mean Frankie, I think he's based in Australia. So,
Oh,
you know, um it's just, a matter of like, yeah,
yeah.
people from all over the world, uh, you know.
Yeah, I don't know anybody there in Australia. I'm curious about the how is the market there, because probably it's a little bit different than other. I mean, it will be more or less the same, but a little bit different from other place.
Hmm.
Because to go there, for example, if you want nowadays, people they usually work on remote, but if you need to move to Australia, it's a little bit like, okay, it's a little bit far away, so I don't know. Let me think.
Yeah, it is a bit far. And I know that I've heard that, some folks say they feel a little bit more isolated out there. But I think the industry there is pretty strong in certain places.
Hmm.
I was talking to a guy, I believe he's from Italy. He moved out to Australia recently for a job, and yeah, so there's definitely industry out there. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
also do know quite a few people who have moved from Australia to California
Uh-huh.
to, to work in the industry. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
depends.
So people are moving nowadays. People are every time moving. Have you been in another place? I mean, out of states now, right?
Not to live, no.
Lucky have been always there.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in Northern California, so kind of near the capital,
Uh-huh.
a little bit north of Sacramento. Um, so it's it definitely getting to know folks that are international, kind of made me realize how lucky I was to have grown up in California, because I went to school in the Bay Area, and I
Uh-huh.
can talk about that, but
So you're at
so
home.
it's you know, I very very much feel for people that have to deal with the visa situation
Yeah, yeah,
and all that. It has to be just so much to deal with, but you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Well, lucky you because you like to be there. So that is perfect.
California is
Fantastic.
great, especially San Diego. It's awesome. So yeah.
So good, so good. Okay, so I think we can start. So I will introduce first the school, okay, and after that I will introduce you, and of course, and after that you can start with the speech, and at the end we will have the questions, and we'll put the questions on the table, and you are free to to start with the answers, and if you want to chat or you want to open more like a kind of like a chatting, it will be perfect.
Yeah, sounds great.
So good. So welcome everybody. Thanks everybody to be here. First of all, would like to remind that we're in creative school, Creativate school, and we have a club. The club Creativate is a is again is a club that we people that pay when they pay 30 euros, and you have a lot of opportunities to have personal advice from professionals in the industry. You have so many videos from the past, the recent past with other artists. And artists like we have today the honor to be here, a great artist. She has been working in the industry as a character artist for more than 10 years. She was working at the beginning. She started in the 2013 in Gaia Interactive. She was working in PlayStation for 4.5 years, and actually she's working in Naughty Dog for 1.5 year. So we have with us Colleen Larson. So welcome, Colleen, and thank you so much to be here with us. Thanks a lot. So it's your turn.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for the intro, and yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite. Um, so yeah, as mentioned, my name's Colleen Larson. I've been in the industry, let's see, 8 years now. So my time at, and I'll get into this, but my time at Gaia and Zynga were actually as a student. Um, and that was more in the mobile game sphere. But yeah, let me just go ahead and share my screen and let's see.
Yeah, you can share your screen. You have
Okay.
the permission of.
Okay. Are you guys able to see this here?
Yep.
Cool. Um, yeah, so currently I'm a senior character artist at Naughty Dog. I've been there for a year and a half now. And the two titles that I've shipped um, in my career are The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. And I'll just give a little bit of background for my journey. So essentially, I kind of grew up drawing. Like I can't really remember a time in my life where I wasn't doing art. And actually, from a young age, I wanted to be a professional artist. I didn't really know like uh, what that meant at the time. Growing up, I loved, Disney. I loved Star Wars, Indiana Jones, video games. I got you can see this image of me at Christmas of 1998 where I got my first PlayStation, like that. My parents didn't know it at the time, but they were changing my life. Playing Crash Bandicoot and Jack and Daxter and tons of other games, tons of other amazing games like Tony Hawk and stuff back in the day. Just instantly fell in love with video games, playing them at friends' houses and families' houses and stuff like. But I've had a lot of influences, and just I always thought that I would be a 2D artist. Some kind of I for a while I wanted to do comics, so you'll see that influence in my work a lot too. But then my interest kind of changed toward maybe Pixar when I was a kid. I remember watching the making of Monsters Inc. Back in 2002 or whatever, and it was just, oh my gosh, Pixar is the best, which they are. But I slowly began to decide that I wanted to do animation. And so I ended up attending San Jose State University in the Bay Area in California. And actually in my first semester in 2011 at San Jose State, I realized that I wasn't good at animation and I didn't actually enjoy it either. I much preferred spending, weeks or months on a single illustration rather than, having to draw something over and over again. I love animation. I adore it. I can't do it myself. So that's why I very much kind of idolize animators, because they really bring things to life, and I actually my interest turned more toward concept art for games after that. So throughout my time at San Jose State, that's kind of what I focused on. This is one of my pieces that I painted for my senior year. My senior year at San Jose State was 2016. But I will hop back in time a little bit to 2013-ish when I first got my first kind of exposure to 3D. Um, these sculpts were done in, I think, Sculptress at the time, which was a separate software from ZBrush. I think they later acquired them, but I remember the first time using it, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But I didn't really think to myself oh, this is a career path for me. Like at the time, I was very focused on 2D art and honing my skills, like learning figure drawing and all the principles of drawing and design and color theory and all of those things. So 3D was kind of in the back of my mind, like I hadn't really even considered it as something that I could actually do for a living. I remember playing Skyrim in 2011, and in the loading screens they had turnarounds of 3D models that would kind of just rotate on the screen as your game was loading. And I remember I remember thinking that would be super fun to do. Even back then it was just these little things starting to kind of fall into place. In 2008, when the summer after I graduated high school, my mom took me to Italy, and I visited Europe for the first time, and that was a huge one for me because obviously we went to the museums and saw the most incredible paintings, but the thing that really stuck with me was actually seeing sculptures from Bernini and Michelangelo and other masters, and that really inspired me. But still, even it took me until 2015, 2016 to start to understand how much I loved 3D and how much like realizing that actually that was my path. And so these are kind of my early, I think this was like 2015 or so. I had to take one more class for one more 3D class for my degree at San Jose State. And in the class, our first half of our semester was to make a character, and I had already done this fan art design, like for Overwatch, that I was very excited about at the time. And so, back then I I hadn't used ZBrush in like 3 years, 2 or 3 years. Like I was kind of just coming back to it, and this is the character that I basically credit for sparking my true interest in 3D. Um, you know, at the time I was like, thought it was like really cool. Obviously like now there's very much, so much I would do differently on it, but yeah, this one definitely has like a special place in my heart because it really just unlocked my spark for 3D. And I was fortunate enough that I got a character art internship basically right after I graduated school. So this was a very unique situation, and I feel very lucky that this happened. But basically, I finished out my degree as an illustrator. So my degree is a Bachelor of Fine Arts in illustration. And during my senior year, I was wrestling like, do I switch to 3D? Do I continue? Like I've made it this far. I've studied 2D for 26 years of my life. Like, what do I do? So I ended up deciding to finish my degree in basically in 2D. So my portfolio was mostly 2D when I graduated, and I had maybe a couple like 3D sculpts in there. They weren't game models. But I I interviewed for this company in San Francisco called Linden Lab. They're known for Second Life, but at the time they were creating like a VR platform, a brand new, basically a social game in VR. And so I was showing them my portfolio, and like most of it was 2D. And they're like, in the middle of the interview, they're like, so this is actually going to be a 3D character art position. And I was like, I gotta be honest with you guys, like, I don't know much about game art. Like, I can sculpt in ZBrush, but I don't really know much beyond that. And because at San Jose State, the focus really is like drawing 2D fundamentals. Like that's really the focus of the program, and 3D is there, definitely like there as a supplemental to everything else. And the guys at Linden Lab, they just said, well, we'll teach you. And so they hired me and two other of my classmates who were also 2D artists at the time, who have later become 3D artists, same as me. And so because of that chance that they took on me, in those next few months, that first year was just, I would say the first like 6 months was just a crazy crash course in basically like learning game art on the job. And not only that, but pretty much, I think it was maybe a month or two after I graduated from San Jose State, I was already taking 3D character art courses online. So I took a class with Adam Scott, who he worked at Ready at Dawn and Naughty Dog, but he's been at Epic Games for a while. Amazing artist, and I took a class with him through Vertex School, which I think has a different name now. But that class really, between that class and also learning game art on the job, during the day, like it was just a crazy time of growth for me, and it was just amazing, like having this brand new world opened up to me. And it just, I do miss drawing sometimes, and I still do draw here and there, but it it honestly, like, it felt like I had truly found what I was meant to do, finally. Even though, like, I thought I knew, like, my whole life, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and you know, it's you never know. You never know what might come your way and how your path might change. So this is one of my favorite characters that I made at Linden. The team there was amazing. They it was a small team of guys, mostly from like XILM guys. My mentor and lead at Linden is named Omar San Cristobal. He's actually at Pixar now. The art director is named Colin Fix. I believe he's working at Santa Monica Studio. But just a really amazing entry into the industry. The game wasn't AAA, but we were using all the same software that I use today. And so it was just an amazing experience. But you know, a couple of years in, I was feeling like, okay, I really want to stretch my legs and stuff, because my whole life, Naughty Dog had really been my goal. I feel like their games really matured as I matured. You know, we started out with Crash Bandicoot, we moved into Jack and Daxter, we got Uncharted, and then we got Last of Us. And it was like, it really felt like as I grew, so did Naughty Dog. And so it was always that pinnacle for me. And so when I started looking for work, uh, I happened to find a a job listing for PlayStation, and I didn't even know that this studio in San Diego existed. And I was like, at first I didn't think it was a real listing. I was like, there's no way. And also, like, you know, I applied, but I was like, there's no way they're gonna pay attention to me. Like, you know, I'm not good enough for them to even like pay me any mind whatsoever. Um, but it just so happened that they liked what they saw, and in August of 2018, I joined PlayStation, working on The Last of Us Part One. Oh, here's one more costume for Linden that I made back early. Maybe this was maybe 2017 or so. Um, and then this one was from 2018. I participated in a contest, and so I basically, the idea of the contest was to bring um, like a character from an older game, like PS2 era, and kind of remaster them. So this is a piece of fan art that I did back in 2018. And so yeah, I began work on Last of Us Part One in 2018. We got pulled on to working on Last of Us Part Two in, I believe it was like late 2019. And so I worked on Last of Us Part Two for maybe like 8 or 10 months before it was shipped. And so PlayStation Visual Arts is a really unsung hero of the industry. Basically, any first party game from, you know, Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Bend Studio, Santa Monica Studio, they have a whole studio of people ranging from different disciplines, from like animation to character art to environment art to programming and everything in between, even also 2D art. They work on all those titles, but even more. So like, you know, they worked on like Helldivers and like the Jedi games from Respawn. They're an amazing studio that I didn't even know was there. But yeah, so I wasn't at Naughty Dog at the time, but I was essentially working on their games since 2018. And honestly, like, having The Last of Us Part Two as my first credit was just I think it will always be crazy to me. It's just, I can't believe, like, when I came to PlayStation, I had no idea what I'd be working on, and you know, I feel so grateful, you know, to have been able to work on honestly what I believe is the best game ever made, in my opinion. You know, so it's crazy. So yeah, these stalker costumes were one of my favorite things I worked on, and I actually like really despise them in the game, but you know, when I see them, I'm like, oh, I worked on that, but then they kill me. Um, but yeah, I have a like love-hate relationship with these guys. Um, uh, so yeah, throughout you know, throughout my career, I've taken classes, I've you know, I've made a lot of efforts to supplement my like my growth. And you know, one thing that I think is really important is to, you know, take classes, but also to do mentorships. So I started this character during a mentorship with Raf Grassetti and Glauco Longi in 2018. So this was early 2018, and I learned so much. Just being able to communicate with them and understand like how they're thinking, and it was just not only that, but also having a group of people, you know, the students as well, you know, and the students, um, you know, are just like also really great artists who just want to learn from these two legends, right? You know, so we had a big range in that class from, you know, I would say I was probably one of um, the more inexperienced artists in this mentorship group. But you know, each one of these classes that I take and these mentorships that I'm doing, like I'm meeting people that I will become friends with, you know. And so I think it's super important to, you know, to be a part of communities and um, you know, platforms like what you guys have here. You know, these are people that you will get to know, and you may end up working with them because the class that I took from Adam Scott in 2016, I ended up working with several of the people that were in that class. And I really think that you know, taking these classes and being really proactive with your education, even outside of a traditional school environment, like is crucial. I think it just shows, you know, what kinds of, you know, who the individuals are that are, you know, putting the extra effort forth because, you know, um, this industry is very is very competitive, and uh, you know, even more so than ever right now. And character art is really challenging. It really takes a long time, not only to make a piece, but also um, to get, you know, to get proficient at it. And you know, it takes a lot of determination. Like you know, there are times that I question myself, like, you know, can I do this? And like, you know, am I good enough? Like, you know, and so you just have to push through those thoughts and keep going, because I think what really it comes down to at the end is the like grit, uh, you know, the determination. But anyway, so I started this character in 2018, and um, I didn't finish it till I believe 2022. Um, you know, so uh, I don't recommend spending that much time on a character because, you know, um, it's not necessary. I mean, I think that spending a good year on a character isn't unheard of. Like, um, but maybe not 4 years, you know. But yeah, I learned so much on this character. I completely restarted his lower body at one point, and I ended up sculpting him in a pose, which I feel like gave a lot more life to the character. Originally, I had created him in like a T pose, and I felt like, you know, just there was just no life to the clothing. So I ultimately decided to sculpt him in a pose, and I'm really, really happy that I did that. I think for, for people that are wanting to get into games, sculpting your character in a T pose is important, because it kind of simulates the job environment, because, on a game, you're always going to be working in T pose, or A pose, sorry. So I think it's good. I think it's better to do that. But, where I was at the time, I feel like I had already kind of, I'd been working in the industry for a while, and I already had, The Last of Us Part 2 under my belt, and I felt, like, hey, I don't, I kind of want to just do this character for fun and as a showpiece, rather than, I'm not going to show any wireframes. I'm not going to show anything like that. So I decided to just kind of go for a kind of showpiece at that stage. So in 2022, we finally shipped The Last of Us Part 1, which I had been working on since 2018. And it was just so it was so special to see this game come to life. Because when I joined, obviously we have the first game, the original game, as as our as our foundation. But when I joined, like, there was no game. Like, it was broken. It was just it didn't exist. And I was actually the first character artist on the project, other than my lead. And so uh, our team was tiny, and it wasn't until Last of Us Part 2 shipped that Naughty Dog um, started helping us with it, which was very much appreciated, because, I don't know, as over time we just saw the team grow and change, and it's just, I believe, no matter what happens in my career, like, I truly believe that this project will be a highlight of my career. And so, when I first started, I was working on NPCs, and I still did work on quite a bit of NPCs over time. But my favorite character that I got to do for Last of Us Part 1 was Riley, which was a huge honor, because I love her character. She's just so great. And so it was really interesting challenge, because even though the designs are all established, what you want to do when you're doing a remake is to, reevaluate, the character's design, and basically just kind of elevate them. And so, um, one thing that we did with Riley was, in the original game, her hair is pretty smooth. And so, working with Ashley Swedowski, who was the character director, character concept director at Naughty Dog, we determined that, her hair should be like more natural, and more, and basically just kind of think about the fact that, like, she's a teenager, like, she's not going to be spending a lot of time on her hair, so, like, what does that look like? What, how can we kind of, like, give her an extra spark of life, an extra spark of like realism and care and thought. And for for this hair, like, I think it was probably one of the most challenging, assets I've ever made in my career, and still is. Like, it was just, it was a huge challenge, but I feel really proud of it, having, basically it became a really big point of collaboration, and I think for me, like, a point of pride. And I do want to mention, like, so at PlayStation Visual Arts, one of the big things that we did there is, or well, they do there, is blend shapes. And so Pat Switzer at PSVA would do the original, the pass to basically characterize a scan, for all of our, like, legacy characters. So essentially, what I did from there was I kind of finalized the sculpt of the head and did all the final textures for it. And also, I did the entire costume, including the backpack, which was actually a lot of work because it had to actually operate. So like the backpack had to open and have an interior and everything. So that was a lot of work to make sure that worked properly. Another character that I got the chance to have ownership on was Robert. Um, he's in the game like pretty briefly, but you know, he's a super fun character to work on. Um, and what's cool is that we essentially worked on scans for almost all of the clothing for Last of Us Part 1. And I believe Part 2 as well did mostly scans, which is it's actually like really fun, in my opinion, to work with scans, because it's not just like a one-to-one, like just kind of like automated thing. It takes a lot of work to process them, and a lot of times you're combining scans and like you're having to sculpt things to make them work together, and especially the level, the quality that you can get at the end is pretty much like unmatched. So yeah, this was super fun to work on because you're adding so much because the clothing for the most part like is pretty new, like when it's scanned. Sometimes they can find scans that are a little bit more weathered and stuff, but for the most part, the wear and tear you're kind of like doing yourself. So it was an interesting thing over time to be able to learn like the kind of like style guide for Last of Us. It's like um how things wear, and like thinking about where the character lives, because that'll determine how grimy their clothes are, like if they have access to wash their clothes, like for example, the hunters in Last of Us Part 1, are going to look very different in terms of like their grunge and their wear and tear than someone who lives in the the city. So I always find that to be, no matter what character I'm working on, like I'm thinking about those things. And I would say like my kind of like approach to characters that I'm working on, um, no matter what it is, regardless of like importance, I'm putting my all into this character, like trying to kind of make them feel like a real person, whether it's a character that has a big a lot of screen time, and a lot of lines, or like a character that like will never say anything and is just like an enemy NPC, just adopting that like mentality of whatever I'm working on, like this is the most important thing right now, and like just bringing life to that character, because that's what originally gave me the spark to fall in love with 3D, was that like, oh wow, this character is alive now. And um seeing the character in 3D is already amazing, like like because it already feels like they're alive. But then once you see them animating and speaking, it's just it's insane. It's on another level. It's you kind of feel like that's your baby, like you know it just it kind of, yeah, it's amazing. And a huge honor was the fact that I got to work on several costumes for Joel and Ellie for Last of Us Part 1. So and what's interesting about about these costumes is that um no matter what character you're looking at, like they're all very collaborative. So the pants were made by myself and my lead Darcy Korch back for The Last of Us Part 2, because they needed them earlier than, and so it basically like the production of Part 2 and Part 1 kind of went hand in hand that way. So the shoes, basically Joel and Ellie's what we call iconic costumes were done pretty early on. I think within the first month that I was at PlayStation, I was working on those, which was was so like surreal for me. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm working on Joel and Ellie today, no big deal. But so Darcy and I collaborated on like her original like pants and shoes and shirt. And then the coat is a scan, but that was originally sculpted by Larry Kameen, who was at PlayStation with us at the time. And then when he left, I basically took over this character, and so I finished out the sculpt, finished out the final textures, and not only that, but you're also creating like the snow maps for the costumes, which is it's not an insignificant amount of work. But that was, and then the mud and everything, all the extra stuff. It's a lot of responsibility when you're taking on a character, even when it's partially finished. Another one that I got to work on was Joel's shirt from the Jackson section of part one, and that was really special because I love this scene in the farmhouse where him and Ellie have that conversation in the upstairs room. I love that moment, and so that was really fun to work on that. Another one that was really collaborative was David, because essentially David was worked on by 3 different artists. Nick Rutland was the original artist who worked on David's head and his costume. He had started the hair when he left, and so that also fell to me. So I finished out his hair and beard. I did final texture pass on the head, final texture pass on the costume, but then Henry Sue, who is an artist at PSVA, he did a ton of work on the costume as well. So, these things, sometimes you'll have almost full ownership of a character, and then sometimes, it'll be a very collaborative process. And honestly, working on someone else's work, like picking up where they left off, is a challenge. No matter how great like the artist is, like different people have different ways of doing things, and whenever I hand off my substance files to someone else, I kind of feel bad because like I kind of feel like I try to stay organized, but I kind of work like a mad scientist. I just have all these crazy layers like everywhere, and I'm like, well, good luck trying to understand what's going on in that file. But yeah, it was really cool to be able to work on so many like really memorable characters from this game. This one is really special to me because toward the end of production on Last of Us Part 1, we started to create the model viewers for like the for the bonus items for the game. And I had pitched this one actually. So it's based on my favorite concept from Last of Us Original, of Joel and Ellie around the campfire by Hyung Nam. And I pitched it, and they went for it, and multiple departments had to come together to make this model viewer. But I think it's so cute because this is a moment you don't really get to see in the game itself. You don't really get to see Joel and Ellie kind of share a laugh around the campfire. And so I love this moment, and the fact that the fact that it made it into the game is super special. And not only that, but these costumes were ones that my lead Darcy and I worked on at the very start of my time at PlayStation. It's just super special. So yeah, from there I joined Naughty Dog officially at the start of 2023, and my experience there has been great. the people there are so so kind and passionate. It's my team is awesome, and yeah, it's just it's a dream. It had been a dream of mine since I was a kid, so it's really special to be there finally. And yeah, it's an exciting time. So I just wanted to give a little bit of advice for people who want to uh, want to work in games as a character artist. So the big one for portfolio is the most important thing is for you to show the possible employer, like, I can do this job. So, you know, Arnold, gives like gorgeous renders, but it's not really like applicable. So my recommendation, is when you're building a character art game portfolio, like, make sure that you're building it within the game art pipeline and then rendering it within Marmoset or UE5 or whatever real-time renderer that you want to choose. Marmoset these days is extremely powerful. And I usually recommend that because Unreal is really valuable to know, but at the same time, when you're trying to learn character art just like by itself, it's hard enough. And then when you add Unreal on top of that, it can get a little overwhelming. So I usually recommend for people for at least their first character to start with Marmoset. You can also just do a bust, as long as you're including things like head, hair, and cloth. Those are the most important to me. I mean, depending on the studio, like if you're applying to Bungie, obviously you'll want to include things like hard surface, but yeah, like, skin, hair, and cloth, like, and obviously anatomy, like those are the big things. Another big thing that I usually recommend for people, trying to get in is create a project for yourself, usually based on a concept that, isn't from the game, but similar to the games you want to work on. So like if you want to work on Last of Us, like, find a concept that's similar, that's kind of Last of Us-esque, and like, make that, because I see a lot of people online like remaking, Ellie from Last of Us, or like Kratos, or, whatever, what have you. And it's like, well, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage because, the version of the game, what you don't see is the months or years of art direction and like collaboration, and that character essentially is done to the best of the quality that it can be done at. And you're putting yourself at a disadvantage trying to recreate that, because like the chances of you hitting that quality are not there, considering the fact that you're a solo artist trying to do this yourself. And not only that, but I like to see, what I like to see is your creativity, your ideas, the way that you interpret a concept. And you can't really do that when you're kind of recreating someone else's work. Um, a big one is like, just remaining humble, but also not letting yourself be too shy, and that brings me to my next point of networking. Like I mentioned earlier, being in communities, engaging with other artists, and then also attending events. I think in California, we're pretty spoiled with that kind of thing. Like we have GDC, ZBrush Summit, and Lightbox, just to name a few. But I know in Europe, you guys have a few big ones out there. I've always wanted to go to THU, but never made it out there yet. But those kinds of events can literally change your life. And I can go into how that happened for me when I was a student. But yeah, just take my word for it that, like, even just one time going to one of these events, like, can genuinely change your life in ways that you can't really see coming. Post your work online. Like, I would say post even when you don't feel like you're good enough or you're ready, because you kind of like you probably never will feel ready. So you might as well just go, like, start, like, just put yourself out there, start showing your work. the awesome thing is to see someone's work improve over time. So one thing that people really worry about is like, oh, like I don't know, like game art read topo, or like I don't know how game art UVs work, you know, like to me the most important thing is like knowing anatomy and knowing like how to sculpt cloth and things like that. You know, these other things can be taught, like you know, I think having an attitude of like enjoying learning, because it is like super important, because I feel like when I when I first started doing 3D, that was when I got kind of reacquainted with my love of learning. And it's like, on one hand, you know, the field of 3D can be very overwhelming and very just like, oh, I need to know everything. But the truth is you don't need to know everything. You just need to know what's in your kind of you know, specificity. And just kind of seeing it all as an exciting challenge. One thing I do want to mention also is, you know, usually ArtStation is a really good place to host your work, and because like it's a very you know, expected format. So it's like I know that when I click on someone's ArtStation, like it's going to be a bunch of tiles with their work in it, and I'll click in the tile and I'll look at their, you know, their work. It's like it basically just saves the person time, whoever's looking at your work. So in terms of general advice, one thing that really helped me was, again, like I mentioned, um, seeing every opportunity, even failures, you know, what you see as a failure, possibly, as an opportunity to grow, um, to learn, you know, what to do differently next time. Um, I think, like in terms of personal work, like I think personal work is kind of the most important thing that you can do. A lot of times, you may not feel you know, you may feel a little burnt out. In that case, you know, you can take time off. You can, you know, spend time with your family, like travel, or just kind of like take time to go outside, you know. But I think having a personal project that you're working on, like, you know, just chipping away at, is really important, because, you know, that's where you grow. Like that's where you apply what you've learned. And I see a lot of really talented young artists who just like don't who are really good, but they just don't finish their work. And it's like, dude, if you could just, you know, if you would just finish this project, like, you know, you'd have a lot more opportunities, because, you know, um they just like bounce from project to project, which I understand, but there comes a point where you just have to kind of stick with a project and just you know, have the determination to finish it, because that's how you build a portfolio. um and yeah, again, like if you're working your ass off and you're feeling like you're burnt out, like there's nothing wrong with taking a break, because I find that, you know, if you're working too hard, then that can be counterproductive too. um yeah, again, just 3D game art is super time consuming. That's just like the nature of it. Um, but at the end, like it's very much like worth the time to take. Um, uh, One big thing that I've learned for my personal projects is to get your character in your renderer like almost immediately, because that way you can continue to update your, you know, your mesh and your textures in the renderer, but like staying in ZBrush for too long like can kind of be a little bit counterproductive. And I find it like a motivational tactic to kind of like see your character kind of coming to life as well. Another thing that I've started implementing in the last couple of years is to uh, concept on top of my 3D renders, because a lot of times you can save yourself a lot of time by just kind of moving things around, or like even painting things in, or like photo bashing stuff in to get an idea of like where you want to go. Yeah. Let's see. Just a little bit more general advice. So, you know, try to maintain an attitude of collaboration with your peers. You know, I think that they always say like the industry is small, and I think that's 100% true. You know, just be kind to the people around you, to your fellow artists, and you know you'll learn a lot from each other. But you know, in terms of like seeing them as your competition, you know, like try to look at the people that are in the industry, because that'll just give a better a less toxic environment for yourself, but also and your peers, but also it'll give you a better idea of like what your benchmark is and where you need to go. A big one is making sure to take care of your health. I think like it's really important to get outside every day, you know, exercise, work out, and just prioritize your mental and physical health. Because I feel like a lot of times we can kind of let those things fall to the wayside when we're really focused on something and we're trying really hard. But, you know, if you're not well, if your body and your mind are not well, you know, your work will also suffer. Um, Finding other hobbies, that's a big one. You know, for me, art is everything, but also it can't be everything. Yeah, there's some good tidbits in here. Uh, let's see. Trying to just be better than you were before. You know, uh, it's good to like go on ArtStation and see, you know, what the most amazing people on the planet are doing, but at the same time, you know, it's always healthy to go back and look at your old work and go, hey, like I've come a long way, you know. And the thing is, when you're working on a piece, you know, there's always going to be things about it that you feel could be better, but you know, adopting a mindset of like, you know, this may be imperfect, but at least, you know, it shows my current skill set, and I'll just continue getting better from here. A big one that people don't realize is that when you get hired at a studio as an intern or a junior, you're not going to be expected to be at a mid or a senior level. They're going to be expecting to teach you and kind of like ramp you up and bring you up to speed. So I hope that, you know, I know that there's not a lot of junior positions out there right now, but you know, regardless, like if you are at a junior level, you know, they will know that bringing you in. So I think that kind of alleviates some stress from people that are trying to get into the industry. The last point, for me, focusing on characters it's always been what I've loved most, even when I was a kid. And it worked out for me to focus on that, because, you know, your love for your craft will come through in your work. And if you're kind of trying to, which is admirable, but if you're trying to make yourself more like more appealing by like being better at more like more areas, you can definitely do that, and there is something to be said for being a generalist. But I find personally that if you focus on what you really like and you put all your energy into that, then you know, um, that's what will cultivate the most the most success, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's it for for what I wanted to say. But yeah, feel free to of you to reach out to me on my social media. I don't really use Twitter or Facebook as much anymore, but I definitely, you know, I'm more active on Instagram. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me for any questions or anything. But I think at this point we can start the Q&A.
Wow, Colleen, thank you so much. Awesome. Because you share a lot of your experience. You share with us what it was behind your work, a lot of advice about the industry. Thank you so much. So how many time do we have for the Q&A?
As much time as you want. I think you know, we said it could even go to 11, so however much time we want.
Cool. Thanks a lot. So we can start. I have a lot of questions, but I'm sure the people, they have hundreds of questions there. So if I will start with the questions here in the chat, okay? Because some people, they ask about how to find sulfide. Sorry to read wrong your name. Sulfide Atithul. He's asking about the how to find a mentor or a mentorship in this industry, because the mentorships that we have in Creativate are all of them in, I mean, the 3D are in Spanish. So maybe in English you have any advice about the mentorships?
So the way that I found mine with Raf and Glauco was you know, I was just following their social media, and so you know, they were like, okay, this thing's going to open up for registration at this time, you know, and so I think, you know, following closely the artists that you admire, even I know that sometimes, like even just getting like a portfolio review from someone at a convention can lead to that. You can, you know, possibly reach out to an artist that you like and ask them if they do mentorships. The thing is, though, you know, you'll have to keep in mind that you know, their time is valuable, so they're not going to necessarily do that for free. Some people will do, you know, feedback here and there for free. Like sometimes I do that as well. I just started doing mentoring through Think Tank Training Center, which is a VFX school based in Canada. So that's another way. And I think I don't have any like a site to refer you to, because I know you guys you have mentorships on your site.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any that are, you know, that where it's like this is a place for 3D artists to, but I
So
know
many
for
options.
yeah. So I would say, you know, reach out to the artists that you like and ask them and you know, I guess be willing to pay them for their time, because their time is valuable, and you know, a lot of times the what you'll get out of it is worth every penny. So yeah, I would say just keep an eye on social media and reach out and
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Colleen. Any other questions? Anybody want to jump to the floor, and just, you don't need to raise your hand. If we have so many people raising hands, of course we will, but you can just start to speak, open your microphone, and you can ask your questions.
Okay.
Who's going to be first?
Hi, Colleen.
Hi.
I prepared some questions before before the what you said, but also I would like to link my first question with the things that you told to us about working on Naughty Dog and being a junior. Uh, Usually we can see that Naughty Dog opens position to work with them, but always as senior positions. So my question is, does Naughty Dog support junior or invest time of seniors to teach juniors?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I actually get this question a lot. So yeah, Indie doesn't really hire juniors for character team, which I know is disappointing to hear. I think they used to, but yeah, the I think I remember a while back seeing someone from ND giving some advice, and they said basically, you know, your work needs to essentially be at the stage where you look as though you've been in the industry for 5 years. So that's where the quality bar needs to be. I think that's a little long. Like, I mean, for me, I didn't get to Naughty Dog till I was, in the industry for at least 5 years. And so I think that unfortunately, I think that's probably not going to change. But I think in the meantime, just kind of cultivating your skills to a degree where, I don't know, moving from one thing to the next, kind of pushing yourself, uh, what I'm trying to say is, even if Naughty Dog doesn't accept, doesn't open junior positions, you can gain a lot of experience at other places. Because like for me, before coming to Naughty Dog, I worked in mobile games, starting in 2013. I worked as a 3D character art, like freelance. I worked at Linden Lab, and then I worked at PlayStation, and like all of these take time, and, you never know where your path might take you. And yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say, you can gain a lot of experience, in other ways, I guess. So yeah, unfortunately, no junior positions at Naughty Dog at the moment. So.
And talking about the junior positions, we have here 2 questions. One is I will read. How would maybe this is Ray? He's asking, thank you for sharing your journey. As you mentioned about the less junior positions out there, is it because of trend of AI? Do you see them going up again?
Yeah, so from what I understand, all the layoffs have essentially, flooded the job market with just a ton of super experienced artists and industry professionals. And so companies essentially, are able to only essentially look for seniors because that's the majority of the people that are looking. But I wouldn't say that they are. I wouldn't say that it's completely only senior positions. I would say, I would like to think that some studios are still looking for juniors. I know that it seems a little bit sparse. I believe that having juniors on a team, having a range of experience levels, on a team is really, really healthy for a character art team, because juniors bring in a different perspective, and like giving the seniors an opportunity to mentor and teach the juniors is really valuable as well. So junior positions are still out there. It's just, right now is a tough time, honestly, for our industry, for everyone in the industry, but especially for people that are trying to get in right now. But that's why I would just say, it takes a lot of effort to find the right position. Takes a lot of failures and rejections, and I've experienced that as well. Many rejection letters. I can't even count how many I've received over time. It's just all you need is a a very important yes, a very important offer letter, so yeah.
Thank you so much, Colleen. We have another question also related to this. Is Adam Abu is asking, quick question: when you applied for a job, do you need a degree or it is not important?
So I'm really glad that I ended up finishing my Bachelor of Fine Arts. I think that it is valuable, but I don't think that it is like the end all be all in terms of importance. I think the most important thing is your work. If you can demonstrate that you can do the job and do it really well, however you've learned how to do that is kind of less important. For me, going to school, I mean, I was in school for a long time. I was in school, I went to junior college from 2008 to 2011, and then to university from 2011 to 2016. So, oh, I see someone says, because I'm in high school and I'm thinking about joining Think Tank. Think Tank is great. They put out a lot of really great graduates, and they teach. I think their program is really solid. The thing is, you also have to consider that like you have to experience life too, right? So yeah, to answer the question, a place like Think Tank or Noman or any other, even CGMA, things like that, are all valid ways to educate yourself and to learn how to do what you need to do for the job. So yeah, there's so many different ways to learn how to do our craft that going, oh, I only need to go to university to get a degree, it's not necessarily it's not necessary anymore, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Sure, Nadia.
It's a bit of the portfolio thing you said. Like you said that making a full character obviously takes a lot of time, and we can also add busts. But if we have more or less one or two full characters, would you make like busts to show more sculpting skills, or kind of focused on game art and that it shows that we kind of keep with the workflow on it?
Yeah, I think it's always important to show the game art, pipeline, no matter what, what size of character you're working on. But on a bust, you can kind of just pour more effort into it, if that makes sense. So you'll still want to show that you can do hair cards and anatomy and, core detail and all those things. So yeah, I think still doing game art, but doing the bust would be a good idea. It's just you can put a little bit more effort into it, rather than like, a full character that takes like months or a year or more. So
Okay, nice, thanks.
Hey, Colleen, I have a question, I guess. Wait, can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, go ahead soon.
So I guess is the only way, I guess, to make into the game industry, is it through game dev and like art, or is there any other pathway like project management or stuff like that?
sure.
That yeah, do you mind like explaining a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I went to school with a lot of folks who, were studying art, but they ended up in production or, different areas like that. Like I mean, recruiting, there's QA, there's programming, there's all different kinds of ways that you can get into the industry. If you ultimately want to be an artist, I would recommend focusing your education on that. But if you're not sure yet, like QA is actually probably the best way in like a general sense. I know for a fact that like a lot of folks have gotten into the industry as a QA tester and have moved into design, art, production, like whichever area they want to be in. And some people stay in QA and really, really enjoy it. QA is a tough role, just because it's a lot of hours, and a lot of times, you can kind of be like the scapegoat for the problems, but I think, if you just want to get your foot into games, like QA is definitely the way to go. But again, like if you want to be an artist, ultimately, I think that studying in that direction is probably a better idea. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Angela, yes. You need to open the microphone.
Gotta plug in the mic.
Okay, now I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
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 Hi. It's just because you said in the advice about going to some events and so on. I wanted to ask about what do you think is a good practice? No, practice no, is good way to go. Like what prepared when you going to go. I was thinking about do a little visit card or something like that, go with the iPad show to the people or something like that.
Yeah, that's a
But
really
I'm
good.
not sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because like as a student, I'd go to different events, and like I have like different business cards from each, different years, and like you have to order like a large amount. So I have like all these different business cards, like from throughout the years. People still use business cards, like you can still make them, and especially if you have like a QR code on them, that makes it really useful. But I would say at the conventions that I've attended, people mostly just connect using Instagram. But I think having an iPad with you that has your portfolio on it is like super important. Yeah, I think those things, and then yeah, I think just going there with an attitude of like, excited to be there, like just wanting to connect with fellow artists, and it's funny because like you'll talk to it's really exhilarating to like to talk with artists you admire, but at the same time, like the other connections you make during those conventions, like can be just as valuable. So it's like talk to everyone, the person that you're in line with, you're in line next to, getting food, you never know who that'll be, or whoever, so yeah, that's what I'd say. Just make sure you have your portfolio with you. And I mean, not everybody has Instagram, that's fine. But I think being present on social media is unfortunately a necessity, especially when you're trying to get a job. Like even on LinkedIn, like sharing your work, sharing works in progress, like things like that, like because you put yourself in front of other people by doing that, and it's just the same way with going to events. You're putting yourself, in there, and like people will remember you, so yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question that is about the what you told about juniors when Endika asked. Is that if you think that sometimes some position for juniors never go out in LinkedIn or something because not working. I mean, maybe someone in the studio says, "Oh no, I know another artist." You think that's
Yeah,
it's
I would say that's pretty often. I mean, I think that I could be wrong, but I think that companies are required to put the position up publicly. I could be wrong. But you know, that's another case in point where like connecting with other artists is really valuable because I I'm a case in point where um an artist that I met in 2016 connected me with another artist who ended up giving me a referral for PlayStation like you know 2 or 3 years down the line. So you know it's like again like connecting with other artists and being showing that you're willing to learn and kind and enthusiastic and can take feedback also like you know like if 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 someone is if someone gives you the time if someone gives you their time to give feedback like definitely you know try to implement it and try to you know be humble and be cognizant of like the time that you're taking um but yeah I would say uh just keep your eye on those sites like LinkedIn and Glassdoor I think is another one or like Indeed even you know going straight to the studio's websites to see what the openings are but yeah referrals definitely are important because you know if you have a recommendation from someone like that counts for a lot so yeah and that again that comes down to kind of being in these communities and connecting with other people.
Thank you.
Hmm.
And thank you for the meeting or the all you said.
Yeah.
Um, Also, with what you were saying about the attitude and what you were saying now, apart from events, it's a bit hard for us to demonstrate this motivation before an interview. Do you know how some tips or something that we can show? I mean, I don't know, like putting something on LinkedIn or I don't know that makes us show all this motivation and
I see what you mean. It's kind of like, well, you know, how do I show my passion for this craft like over social media? But I think I think it comes down to kind of like on LinkedIn, you know, you go, you know, you post your work and like you're like you know this is my current progress on my project. I've been working on this for such and such time like um you know kind of just expressing your just say you know being like I love games and I you know I've always wanted to get into games or whatever like people like to hear other people's stories you know their journeys um uh kind of just yeah I think that you can express these things um just naturally just kind of um you know show your personality through your posts and I mean it'll come out through your work too right um but I think you know in terms of interviews that's where you know that's where your opportunity is to kind of share your enthusiasm for you know the craft and for the industry you know and I think that counts for a lot you know I think that's again another thing about juniors that's great is that like I mean I feel like I'm a pretty enthusiastic person like I love games I still think you know even 8 years into the industry like I still think that games are a miracle and it's amazing that any game gets made let alone like especially at the quality level that like you know a lot of these studios are making games it's pretty remarkable actually um but it's like yeah just you know, whenever you have an opportunity, you know, to show your personality, like, you know, don't hesitate to do that. Yeah, that's what I would say. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
I think Indika, you said you had a couple of questions.
Yeah, I have some questions, but I don't want to disturb other guys with their questions, so I let them to ask also. My question is about more about character art, because I'm a character artist, so I would like to ask you some technical aspects, because big studios you never show the wireframes or texture sets or things like that on our station. So I would like to ask you if how many UV sets you use for character, for example, on The Last of Us, the polygon count, the difference between the first game and the second games in terms of poly count, textures, and so on.
So I think I can just answer for maybe like, you know, toward your personal projects. So an average like AAA game character is going to run maybe 100,000 polygons to 150. I would say that's like a pretty good count. And I would say like on personal projects, you can kind of push a little bit more toward it being higher, because, you know, having it look good is kind of, I guess what I'll say is if it's too optimized, you won't allow your quality of your work to shine. You don't want it to be like 500,000, you know, but like, you know, having your meshes be a little more dense. And then, I mean, on your personal projects, you can have your textures be, you know, 4K or something like that. You know, I think like an average shirt, you know, mesh is going to be maybe like 15,000 polygons, like, you know, pants maybe like 20,000, you know. So it's like as long as your polygon count is like supporting your art looking as good as possible with good topology flow and everything, like I think that's the most important thing. In terms of UV sets, I usually do one UV set for like the head, one UV set for the eyes, one UV set for like the shirt. If like on David's jacket, you know, there's that small shirt underneath.
Yes.
I'll combine that with the jacket, but for the most part, like each clothing item is going to have its own set. And that's the way that we work. But I mean, that's the way I work at home as well when I'm working on personal projects. I think some studios would combine things more, like depending on, you know, depending on their like their requirements. You know, I've only my only AAA experience has been at Naughty Dog, so like I don't know how other studios do it. But you know, I don't think that's I don't think that's a you know, too much. I think that's like pretty good. Like if you have a pair of pants like that's on their own sheet, or like shoes, they could be on their own sheet. You know, hair can be on its own, or beard can be on its own, you know, things like that. Just so you're not sacrificing any quality, I guess.
Okay. And if the character has props, for example, all the props in one UV set, or you also separate on type of props, or?
Sure. Yeah, they could be all together or separate depending on, you know, how the quality is looking, because like, you know, if you combine them too much and you're looking at it in your renderer and you're like, okay, that's a little bit too low. Like the resolution is a little bit too low on these. You know, you can kind of like split them out, and, you know, make their UV space a little bit bigger so that, you know, essentially, like I was saying, If you're going a little bit too optimized, then the quality of the work might suffer. So I think just striking a balance where you have enough quality, you have enough resolution, but you also are trying to be mindful of, how to best squeeze the quality out, like, by combining things. So yeah, I think it's kind of up to you to assess like the resolution at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. And for example, you said to us that the clothes are based on scans,
Mhm.
and you in Naughty Dog you sculpt the eyes and the face from scratch. Also, you base on scans.
So all the heads are based on scans as well.
Okay.
A lot of times, like what we called the legacy characters, so the characters that were originally in Last of Us 1, they would cast someone, so they'd put out a casting call, and they would, basically like interview people and see like, okay, does this person's likeness fit Riley's head pretty closely? And then we'd scan them, and then do like a characterization pass. So yes, they are all based on scans. But in terms of personal projects, I think using scans for like pore detail and like color map and stuff is totally good. But I think it's more important to like sculpt those things yourself. I will say though, like if you have experience with scans, it's also like it's not a bad skill set to have as well. So like, maybe doing an exercise where you process a scan head is a good exercise. 3D Scan Store is my favorite resource for scans, and I also like texturing XYZ's V-face line is really good for scans as well. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
About the workflow, I have one question, and is I guess you use Marvelous Designer.
Yeah.
How do you usually use it? I mean, do you create the mess thinking on a good topology when you create on Marvelous, or you just do a base mess, a sculpt, and then you will do the their topology later?
Good question. So for Marvelous, I usually see the Marvelous designer result as kind of like only the beginning. So I'll usually export the Marvelous designer mesh, and then bring it into ZBrush and just do like a quick zero mesh to get like the low poly, and then do all the sculpting and stuff, and then retopologize that. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to kind of like retopo it in a really like with a really clean mesh for sculpting, and then that way when you're doing your final game mesh, it's less work. So you kind of put the work, you kind of move, all the work toward the beginning, and then at the end you're like, it's not as hard. Because like with the zero mesh high res, you have to kind of completely redo that mesh, because zero mesher, it gives a lot of like spirals and like weird things. So it's just a matter of like what you want to do. If you want to do the work now or like leave the work for yourself later, like that's kind of up to you. But yeah, with Marvelous, I mean, for me, Marvelous is like again like a beginning, where you can take Marvelous assets and sculpt quite a bit on them and make them a lot better. I know a lot of people like are really good at Marvelous, so they can get like amazing results. That's not me. Like I use it to a point, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna sculpt the rest. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Colleen.
Hey.
I was curious about the difference between working directly with Naughty Dog or working with PlayStation, because I think you work in The Last of Us, but with PlayStation and with Naughty Dog too. So maybe it's any difference or it's the same.
Yeah, good question. It is different. I mean, it's not super different because the people at PlayStation and Naughty Dog are both great. But I would say, you know, because Last of Us Part 1 was a remake, so everything is already established and you're kind of just everything is quantifiable where you're like, this is a list of characters we need. It's a lot more like understandable and like manageable. Also like our production team at PlayStation Visual Arts was great. Like it's probably the most smooth game project I'll ever be on because of all these factors. But production like really did a great job at making sure we were like hitting our deadlines. And honestly, like the deadlines were not very like intense. A lot of times they let me set my own deadlines, which was really nice. But in terms of like, so Last of Us Part 1 was great to work on. The Last of Us Part 2 was a little bit more chaotic, and not too bad, but it was like just needed a lot of things like in a short period of time. And we were on Part 2, we were more supporting, so we were creating things like corpses or enemy costumes, in um, in the hotel. Like there's a bunch of stalkers that have kind of been like have gone dormant, and they're kind of like formed into the wall, and you like walk by them and you don't know if they're dead or they're gonna like pop out and try to kill you. Like PlayStation did all of those. That was like one of our big responsibilities, and that was a lot of work. It was pretty crazy. We did all the corpses from like the ending scene, which I don't want to say too much about it, but so I would say, Last of Us Part 2 production was pretty famous for being pretty intense and pretty like very heavy on crunch. And I don't know if you guys have watched the Grounded 2 documentary, but it's amazing if you guys haven't seen it. Gives a really nice insight into like, game production. But we at PlayStation were pretty sheltered from that, which I feel fortunate about. Because we're basically just saying, what do you guys need? And they're going, we need corpses, like we need these things. I definitely worked overtime during that time, but it was a fun overtime. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm working on Last of Us 2. Like I don't even mind working till 10 p.m. But I know like on the Naughty Dog side, they had been doing those hours for a long time, so it's like it's not fun anymore, I think. I don't want to speak for them, but on our end, it was just like it was a fun, crazy time. So I think being at PlayStation kind of, I see a cat tail. Oh, it's cute. And being at PlayStation kind of just was the best of, in a way, I don't want to say the best of both worlds, but kind of the best of both worlds where, I got to work on these things at a, but like the crunch wasn't there. which was nice. But then, at Naughty Dog, I've only been there a year and a half, but my experience so far is that Naughty Dog is really making like genuine, really big efforts to alleviate crunch going forward. I mean, a certain amount of crunch is unavoidable, and I mean, some people would argue that it's not, that it should be avoidable with the right, the right schedules and everything. But they're putting so much effort into trying to avoid that, which I really, really appreciate, because clearly, like, they're addressing the elephant in the room, going like, yeah, we're gonna try to do better on this. But yeah, in terms of the differences, at PlayStation, the people were amazing, teams were just awesome. But you still feel separated from the mothership. So you're still like, I'm still not quite there. And and being at Naughty Dog, it's like, I'm here. It's like, and everyone at ND is really passionate about ND. Like, when we have Zoom meetings and studio-wide meetings, like, the chat is just going crazy. Like, people are just they're also really funny. Like, they're just always cracking jokes, and but like, they're really talented people, and really nice. But it's just this different feeling of like, I'm in the middle of it now. So I think I very much value both experiences, because my time at PlayStation was so positive. And the friends that I made there, I think, I hope that I know them for the rest of my life. And I still get to go back there every once in a while, because we do still work with them. So it's always really nice to see them again. But yeah, I think that was the main differences there.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Yes,
Yes,
Angela.
that's something, and it's more. I want to ask you if you would like someday to be lead artist.
That's good.
Uh,
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I've been asked that before.
uh, and maybe it's more tricky about that, but do you think to be a lead artist as female is more complex or difficult for us than for males?
That's a
Do you
good
think that
question.
that exists or?
Yeah, I think for me, at the moment, no. Because a lot of times when you become lead, you end up doing a little less art, and you do more leading. You do more, you're basically, you have a lot more responsibility, but you end up doing less art. And for me, I think for most people, the art is the most important thing. So I think, principal artist is a role that is at a lot of studios, and it's rare. It's a more rare position, but it's essentially like, you have the seniority and the experience level of a lead, but you don't have the same, like, responsibilities in terms of like organization and leadership. That's probably what I'd aim for more so. In terms of, women having opportunities to be lead, I think at the right studio, yes. I can't speak for every studio. I'd like to think that a lot of studios are becoming, it's just more common for women to be in higher roles. Like, Naughty Dog is definitely one of them. So Ali, who was the artist who created Ellie for Last of Us Part 2, she was the lead, at on the ND character team before she left. So it's definitely possible. And I mean, I kind of got used to being the only woman on my teams for most of my career. But here at Naughty Dog, our team is almost equally split between the two, which is like, it's great. And yeah, honestly, like, it makes me really happy because I see more and more women in the 3D field, like really, really awesome artists, just like just doing great things. And yeah, it's like I'd love to see that because it's I know it can be hard depending on the environment. So yeah, it's definitely possible. I'm very inspired by them. So yeah.
Thank you. I inspired a lot.
Colleen, I think almost 2 hours. So I don't know if there is another question or maybe we take a lot of time from you. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, for your generosity to share all of this knowledge and experience with us. So
Yeah, it's my
you know
pleasure.
where we are.
Yeah, and you guys know where I am. I'm on social media. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or anything. So yeah, this is my pleasure, and I really appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for your
Yeah.
time. So see you soon and hope to see you or to see your works soon.
Maybe some soon. I actually have a workshop that I'm finishing up for Gnomon Workshops. So
So please
once
share
that,
with us. Share with us about the workshop, and we will
oh, cool.
inform and we will share in our social media for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Same here.
Fantastic.
I'll be sure to share it. But yeah, thanks again.
So thank you so much.
Have a good day,
Thank you
guys.
so much.